Hello there. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or the streaming apps of those two fine radio stations, which you can find wherever apps are given away, because we do give it away. They're free to download, they're free to use, and they're sponsored by Diversus Health. Mental health and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program, and I would love to get your thoughts. You could call or text them in at 719-247-1313, or you can find us on social media. On Twitter is probably the best place to get a response, at Gingerly Tweets. A lot of ground to cover, but let's start with the Avs last night. And I feel like last night's game, a 5-1 win over Anaheim, was a distinct possibility after the way the Avs closed out the LA Kings game. Because that game was a little bit of a slog. It was a little bit difficult for the Avalanche, but then late in that game, they kind of broke out and they ended up, the final score doesn't quite indicate how tight that game was for most of it, but the end score line, they made it lopsided in the end. And I thought after that Kings game that maybe the Avs had kind of found their footing after the Olympic break. And sure enough, last night, they rout a good, not great, to be fair, Anaheim Ducks team on the second night of a back-to-back. So, yeah, maybe Anaheim's not Minnesota or Dallas, but they're a good team. They were on their home ice, and the Avs were playing their second game in as many nights. But that looked more like the team that we saw most of the time before the Olympic break. And you look at where the Avs have gone. So they ended up winning out of this break 4 of 5 in a stretch that they played 4 games in 6 nights. So it was a difficult stretch to navigate. They're not the only team, but with the number of Olympians coming back, Jared Bednar talked about this after the game. I mean, the Avalanche didn't even have most of their guys, and they just kind of took these two, they weren't really halves, but two parts of this team, the non-Olympians and the Olympians, and they kind of mashed them together, and they had to play a game in Utah. But it looked difficult for the Avs. And then, of course, the one game that maybe above all others you wish they would have gotten if you're an Avs fan is the Minnesota game. That's the one they lost. But still, a very good run of form over a very difficult stretch. Here's Jared Bednar talking about what I just alluded to.
I mean, we hit the ice in the Utah game, and we hadn't had our team together at all, not for 1 minute before we played, and when we were right into a back-to-back. So we still haven't got our team on the ice together except for one pregame skate. So I think they've handled it real well. There was significant amount of maturity from the group and focus coming into this stretch, and now we're through it and getting ready for one of the biggest games of the year, Friday against Dallas.
And I will get to that because it's not just Dallas that's coming up. It's also Minnesota. But more on that in a moment. I don't want to quite leave last night's game yet, and the Avalanche and the way they've played coming out of the Olympic break yet. I think it was certainly inevitable that the Avs were going to break out. I thought going into the Olympic break, they had a little bit of senioritis. Little bit of, we're ready for the break. We're ready to go out to the Olympics for the guys who did. And it was a matter of time before the Avs start looking like themselves again. And I think last night was where they got it. Perfect timing, of course, with the game Jared Bednar just mentioned with Dallas, and then Minnesota right on the very next game out. But one thing about last night's game, and it has started to become a thing out of the break, the power play. The power play has been more productive in this stretch than any I can remember, and Jared Bednar is certainly pleased about it.
For me, that's 3 and 4 nights, 5 nights. There's definitely positives, no question, but we're still building it. Like I said, we're not I told our guys, we're not taking the baggage in from 50 games or whatever. Like when we came out of the break, it was a hard restart. We're focused on very specific things and expectations on what we want to see. And we're seeing enough things, and pucks are starting to go in for us here. So we're pretty happy with that. And now we got to keep building and making it better and better and more dangerous on a nightly basis.
And what has made the Avalanche power play look more dangerous is Marty Necas. Now, to be fair, one of those power play goals that the Avs have gotten was an empty netter. So let's not say all is fixed forevermore here. But yes, the numbers say they have had a more productive stretch on the power play than they really have at any point this season, and Marty Necas has been in the middle of it. And I wonder this going into the Olympics. It more specifically about Nathan MacKinnon, Devon Toews, and Cale Makar, right? 3 guys that are on the top power play unit of the Avs, could be on the top power play unit of Canada, and whether they could, not they, but whether Dave Haxtell and the Avalanche coaching staff could see something the way that Team Canada uses these guys and try to take some of that and say, maybe we can add this to what we do, considering 3 members of Team Canada are on our top power play unit. But as you're watching the tournament, and I made a joke about this, during the Olympics, all they need to do is get Connor McDavid on this power play unit with them, and they'll be good. So I don't know what you could really glean from what Team Canada did on the power play, because as talented as the Avs are on that top power play unit, I mean, Team Canada is like even better because it's McKinnon's, Makar, and also throwing in Connor McDavid and everybody else. But there was a team with an Avalanche player in that tournament that I think you're seeing the Avs take something from. It's not Canada, it's Czechia. The position that they had Marty Necas in, basically in the left hand circle as the Avs are, or as Czechia is going towards goal. Have him on the left so that he can fire it with his right-handed shot. And it worked for Czechia quite a bit during the Olympics. There's one issue. That's the spot that Nathan MacKinnon occupies on the Avs power play. So this was something that I don't know a lot of people were suggesting that Marty Necas be put in the spot that Nathan MacKinnon inhabits. I mean, because listen to that sentence. You would move Nathan MacKinnon out of a certain spot to accommodate someone else and things would get better. That's counterintuitive. That makes no sense. But it worked so well for Czechia, and now you're seeing it in 2 of Marty Necas's power play goals are from that spot. The one last night was from that spot on a great cross-ice feed from Brock Nelson, and Marty Necas just ripped it home. And Nathan McKinnon, if you're keeping tabs, is more behind and around the goal. That's where he was last night on that power play goal. And essentially what you're doing, and this all sounds very matter of fact and obvious with the benefit of hindsight, but part of the reason why the Avs power play has struggled is because they don't have Mikko Rantanen. What did Mikko Rantanen do? What role did he have? What spot on the ice did he have? Essentially the same thing that Marty Necas is now in, but on the other side of the ice. So why wouldn't a possible answer to the Avalanche power play woes be to take the guy that they sacrificed Mikko Rantanen for? Why wouldn't Marty Necas be the fix here? Why wouldn't he be? I mean, you're losing Mikko Rantanen, which has hurt your power play. So why not the guy you got in return? Why doesn't he try to help you there? He's fit into every other role Mikko Rantanen has had. So, but here's the thing with it, right? And it all makes sense, right? Brock Nelson on the other side of the ice, if he can make that cross-ice pass to Necas, then absolutely you got the penalty kill unit of the opponent kind of scrambling to get across the ice. But later in that game, they tried it again. And Anaheim deflected, or they may have deflected the puck, but the pass, because of the distance it traveled, was a little bit behind Necas. So in theory, it makes all the sense in the world, and it's worked multiple times, but it's a very difficult play to make. But in the absence of any other good ideas, because the Avalanche clearly won't take mine, which is less talent on the power play, more grinders, more guys that are going to get into the dirty areas. They're clearly not doing that. They're going to stick with the same personnel. This is the next logical step. Move those pieces around. And you saw with Czechia what Marty Necas can do in that spot. And Nathan McKinnon bullying guys out in front of the net is not a bad spot for him to be in either. So for now, if you're an Avs fan, that's what you're clinging to. You should see more of it moving forward, and we'll see how effective it is as the competition level takes a step up over the next 2 games. It's a very difficult thing for the Avs to pull off on the power play. And I don't think that this is the be-all, end-all for the Avs power play. But look, you're looking for any, as Jared Bednar pointed out, any progress. Anything that you're doing differently that has worked, you seize on it, you double down on it, and you see if you can sustain it moving forward. But now you go against Dallas and Minnesota. And Jared Bednar's not shy about talking about the consequence of Friday. Now, I was a little bit different than him in terms of the consequence of the Minnesota game. I didn't look at the loss against Minnesota as detrimental as maybe Jared Bednar did. But I said it's perfect for Jared Bednar because he can point to that game and see, guys, this is a team that you might have to go through at some point and they beat you. And to make the Central feel more up for grabs. It was one of those talking points that coaches love to have served up to them on a silver platter. But if the Avs come out of this weekend and they take 2 losses, then it gets much tighter in the Central, because I think a lot of it was, even when the Avs lost to Minnesota, it was like, well, Dallas doesn't have Mikko Rantanen. And Minnesota is far enough behind, you don't worry about it. Well, Dallas has won, 10 games in a row? They just made a move today to bring in Tyler Myers. So this weekend is of real consequence to this team. So it's perfect timing for them to have kind of that breakout game that they had last night against Anaheim, and it's perfect timing to find at least something with the power play to build on. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the Avs. Of course, there's another thing going on with Colorado right now before they even play Dallas. How different will this team look taking the ice for that game down in Texas? We'll talk about that as well. Just getting going on this Wednesday edition of the show. Glad to have you on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. This Friday at 9 a.m., make sure you get on KVOR.com or extrasports1300.com to take advantage of our sweet deal of the week from the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum. The Paralympics are underway, day 2. I believe those opening ceremonies are Friday, so kind of same deal as the Olympics, but we're keeping it going. The Olympic and Paralympic spirit. So great time to go and visit the museum. And what this sweet deal is basically you are going to get unlimited year-round access for 2 adults and additional household family members, plus 4 guest passes, as well as a bunch of other stuff for half price. So it's a yearly membership for half the price. And if you go on to the museum's website, you'll see that there's a passport program that if you travel, will get you into a lot of other museums across the country that you may be interested in. So it's an amazing deal. Go to, again, KVOR.com or extrasports1300.com on Friday, 9 a.m. to pick up your family membership to the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum, valued at $175 on sale for $87.50. Before the Avs take the ice again, the trade deadline will have passed. And the rumors are starting to heat up quite a bit with the Colorado Avalanche. And Nazem Kadri is still a name at the forefront. The Avalanche were in Anaheim the night that Calgary was playing them. Calgary's general manager was on hand. Chris McFarland was on hand. And a lot of people are saying, what else could they possibly be talking about? And I believe that the Avs are trying to figure out a way to get Nazem Kadri. And I said this the other day, they're not going to sacrifice the ability to sign Cale Makar long-term. They're just not going to do it. So if they acquire Nazem Kadri, then clearly they have a plan to make sure Cale Makar gets the money he deserves and stays in an Avalanche sweater. But with that does present some difficulties. And the Avs made the move with Sam Girard, opened up more space, and they could afford Nazem Kadri right now. But can they afford him a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, which Nazem Kadri has a contract for? That gets trickier. This is where I think the Valeri Nichushkin rumors are coming from. He has been mentioned a few times in the last couple of days as someone who might be on the move. And when you look at it financially, if you were to, in theory, swap Nazem Kadri for Valeri Nichushkin, you could make the money work now and beyond and still be able to sign Cale Makar long-term. Now, it doesn't mean that Nichushkin has to go to Calgary necessarily for Nazem Kadri. Right? But the idea is if you are going to get Nazem Kadri, you're going to probably have to move someone off the books, either in a trade with Calgary or in a different trade with someone else. Right? Kind of think of the Sam Girard trade. So I think that's where his name is starting to float a little bit, is because trading like a Ross Colton makes about $3 million less a year than Nazem Kadri does, plus his contract is up sooner than Kadri's. Now, there is an aspect to this which could just be Chris McFarland saying, I'm getting who I'm getting now. I'm not going to sacrifice Cale Makar, but I'm probably going to have to figure something else out down the road. But it's still, you look at the roster, and really Nichushkin is the guy that you keep coming back to, and you're being like, that's the guy that would make some sense to move his money off the books. Now, doesn't it doesn't really accomplish the goal that I think the Avalanche are trying to get accomplished, right? Because if you get Nazem Kadri, are you going to play him on the wing? Which he can do, but the whole idea was the Avs getting Nazem Kadri to essentially be their third line center. But then you would open up a hole in your top six. So that's why I keep saying, Valeri Nichushkin maybe could be in a Nazem Kadri trade, but he could also be in another trade. So you move Valeri Nichushkin for another winger, and then you go out and make the move for Nazem Kadri. I think at the very least, with Valeri Nichushkin, this is the Avalanche. Because again, the rumor is coming from somewhere. I feel like this is the Avalanche kind of sending a little message to Valeri Nichushkin, because he has not had. I know there's so many other things that we've talked about surrounding the Avalanche, but if you look at Valeri Nichushkin, he's had a down year. So there's nothing that really Valeri Nichushkin can do between now and the trade deadline to, break out of whatever funk he's in. But this is kind of a two-pronged thing where, one, you kind of announce to the NHL world, hey, we're open for business on this guy. But two, if a trade isn't consummated, then you will have sent a message to Valeri Nichushkin like, we stuck by you through all of the stuff that you were dealing with, but you got to produce. We're in the business of winning Stanley Cups, and you're not helping us like you have previously to accomplish that goal. So from a trade standpoint, money-wise, it makes some sense. But at the very least, this could be the organization trying to send a message to a guy that is heavily dependent on in that top six to get going here. And I was thinking about this, independent of the Kadri thing. What if this is a change of scenery type trade? You got out everything you could out of Valeri Nichushkin. Do you look to a place like Vancouver and say, we'll take Jake DeBrusk back, put in our top six? DeBrusk not pleased to be in Vancouver. He just said the other day that his game doesn't fit a rebuild. So could there just be one of those hockey trades where you send out one guy who's underperforming but could get back to what he was in another location, and you kind of bring back that same player? But it's one more iron in the fire here for Chris McFarland, who did say the other day, essentially don't pigeonhole us into saying we're just looking for a third line center. We're looking for anything that will upgrade this team. But so now you have the Kadri stuff. Now Valeri Nichushkin, as far as a potential player that the Avalanche are willing to move off of. And the picture's starting to become a little bit clearer here, less than 48 hours before the trade deadline. I think in the end, the Avalanche do address that third line center spot in a way that is not maybe Nazem Kadri, but it's significant. I'll throw out one player that I'm thinking about in this case. Vince Trocheck, obviously a member of Team USA, won gold. He could fit in very well to that spot for the Colorado Avalanche. Now, the sticking point with him isn't as much money like it is Nazem Kadri. His deal is he doesn't want to move too far away from his family. In fact, he talked about it the other day and kind of had a funny story with his son where he talked to his son about, this time of year and the reality of dad's job and that he might have to go play in another city. And his son basically, who I think is like 7, basically said, well, my hockey team's good, so I'm not going anywhere. But Vince Trocheck wants to stay as close to his family as he can. Would the allure of potentially winning a Stanley Cup be enough for Vincent Trocheck to say, you know what? Certainly not close to my family, but Colorado, maybe it's a good time, a good place eventually for my family to move. He's got a couple years left on his deal. And that's the thing with the Avalanche going into this trade deadline. I feel like they're a destination that would be exceptions to some of this stuff that we're hearing. Like Vince Trocheck wants to stay essentially in the East. But you're going to the best team in the league. Would that be enough to say, you know what? This is the exception I will make? With Nazem Kadri, a guy that's still been productive enough to feel like he can be a big-time contributor on another team, which he can. But would Colorado be the exception to Nazem Kadri's rule, if he has one, of I want to be a top 6 frontline player. I want to be a difference maker. Not that he wouldn't be a difference maker with Colorado, but it would be in a smaller role. Would Colorado be the exception for him in that regard? I think that's what makes the Avalanche so intriguing. And with the move they made with Sam Girard to not only get Brett Kulak, who's a better fit for them, but also to open up more space, now they're players in the trade market, and they would be a destination that I think some of these guys would be willing to bend any rules they might have in their minds for a chance to join up with arguably the best player in the world, another guy that's probably third best in the world, and a team that right now is on top of the Central and is the best team in the league. Again, Friday at 1 o'clock Mountain Time is the NHL trade deadline. I'll take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. One move made today by a chief rival of the Avs, Tyler Myers, being traded from Vancouver. They've been holding him out. Detroit was a potential landing spot for him, but he ends up going to Dallas. So Dallas has gotten better. We know that Minnesota got significantly better with the addition of Quinn Hughes. There's a bit of an arms race going on here in the Central Division. What are the Avs going to do? Brett Kulak is not the type of move you make in an arms race. But again, with the money you freed up, is it a precursor to a bigger move? We'll see between now and 1 o'clock on Friday. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, some history was made last night at Clune Arena. Think you have the luck of the Irish? Enter to win our pot full of cash. So this will be a St. Paddy's Day you'll never forget, with $5,000 in our Luck of the Irish giveaway. Just head to extrasports1300.com or kvor.com to enter this national contest, which is sponsored locally by Bullseye Plumbing, Heating, and Air. No luck needed when Bullseye's on target. Speaking of being on target, I'll just say this because I am nothing if not honest. I did not expect to witness history last night at Clune Arena. It had been a difficult stretch of games for Air Force senior guard Milani Perry, who has been climbing the ladder on the all-time scoring list for the school. Now, don't get me wrong, I fully expected by the time her career was over to have broken the record. But she came into play last night 25 points back of the number one spot. And I, again, to be honest, thought that more likely I would be calling that history in Las Vegas on Saturday. But there was a point in that game in the second half when Air Force was trying to furiously rally back against San Diego State, where Milani Perry got a couple of shots to go down. And then all of a sudden, she was able to attack a little bit more. And she was getting by the defense a little bit more. And I started thinking, like, maybe we are going to see it. And with about 2 minutes left in the game, Milani Perry, as she has done so many times, drives, spins, goes to the rim, puts the shot in, and becomes the all-time leading scorer in Air Force women's basketball history with 26 points last night. Just got it. 1,739 now is the record that is held by Milani Perry, with at least one more game to go. I caught up with Milani after the game and asked her how much it meant to her to be able to do it at Clune Arena as opposed to, on a neutral floor in Las Vegas this weekend.
It was very important to me, just the fact that this was our last home game here ever, and having all my family and all the fans here. It was something that I really wanted to accomplish. I didn't come into the game thinking about it, but when I realized, like, hey, it's possible, then I was like, okay.
And I think that was the moment I was referring to. I think there was a point in that game where Milani's like, wait a minute, I might be able to get this thing. And in Milani Perry fashion, she wasn't forcing it. In fact, it was one of her better shooting performances that she's had recently. And it was all necessary, right, for Air Force if they were going to rally and win that game. They needed Milani Perry to put the team on her back. Now, she didn't do it alone. Emily Adams, another senior last night, had a terrific final game at Clune Arena. But this team goes as Milani Perry goes. And when she started to feel it in that second half, then Air Force kind of felt like maybe we can pull this off. Now, they did end up falling short against a team that is the regular season conference champions and are now 19-1 in conference play. But it was never Milani Perry last night going out trying to break the record. Now, if she came into the game 2 points back, 4 points back, then maybe you might see Milani come out and say, let me take the first few and see if I can't get this thing before we settle into the game. But I think she was kind of a similar mind as I was, where, that's against the best team in the conference, a team that's I think they're second in scoring defense. You don't go into the game saying, yeah, I'm just going to go out and get 26 points against this team. But she did. And as disappointing as the loss was, because and I'm going to go into Vegas thinking this as well. I think if Air Force is at their very best, they are a matchup problem for San Diego State in a way that other teams aren't. But the fact of the matter is, last night, for the most part, Air Force wasn't at their best. And the better team won. But as disappointing as the loss was to not end the regular season on that high note, for Milani to break that record, also for Emily Adams to have such a great game on senior night, it didn't make it feel as much of a loss as it ultimately was for the Air Force Falcons. But, I've been able to call the majority of Milani's games over the course of her career. And given, the difficulties that the academy has in terms of recruiting, made even more difficult in the new world of college athletics, there are players that stick out and are uncommon for what Air Force has. And I think all the coaches at Air Force, whether it's Troy Calhoun or Stacey McIntyre or Frank Serratori, have always been able to find someone like that. They can't get as many of them without the allure of NIL and the use of the transfer portal, and also Air Force is kind of a difficult school to get into. But Milani Perry is one of those players, and what continues to I just kind of chuckle when I hear it. The fact that she was all set to go to West Point. And two things. One, good on the Falcons for getting her away from a service academy rival. But two, the fact that she was always, she could play. She's going to be, she should be first team all conference. She won the scoring title in the conference. She's been the most valuable player on Air Force. I don't know how she doesn't get first team all conference. But the fact that should be first team all conference means she could basically play for any team, including the one on the court with Air Force last night in San Diego State. And yet she had the mind all along that she was going to go to a service academy. And that speaks to who Milani Perry is as a person and what goals she has in her life. But it's been a remarkable career for her, and there were players before her that laid the groundwork. Obviously, Chris Gobrecht did a lot of the heavy lifting to get this program to not just respectability, but to a level of competitiveness that this team is now routinely at year in and year out. But you think of the success that Air Force has had with Milani Perry on their roster, multiple postseason tournament appearances, which is not something that this program has been able to do since they became a Division I program. Obviously, a huge part of some of the best years that this program has ever had. And last night, I thought she'd get close. I did. I wasn't thinking that she was still going to be, 15, 20 points away. I thought she could make a run at it. I thought ultimately maybe she wouldn't get it, but and shame on me because I've watched enough Milani Perry games to know when she gets going, man, she's as unstoppable as any scorer in the Mountain West Conference. And she got it going in that second half and was able to do it in front of family, in front of friends, and classmates. The cadets were out at that game last night. It was one of the better atmospheres that Air Force has played in front of all year. And for Milani Perry to make that history even before, it would have counted if she would have done it on Saturday, but it wouldn't have meant as much. And I could see the emotion on Milani's face and in her eyes that it meant a ton to her. So congratulations to Milani. Now the season's on the line from here on out. Wyoming was able to beat Grand Canyon last night, which all just means that Wyoming gets to be the home team in that 8-9 matchup. It will be Wyoming and Air Force for a third time this year. It will be the rubber match of the series as each team has won on their respective home floors. Don't forget the history that Wyoming was the team that knocked Air Force out of the Mount West tournament last year. And when I talked to Emily Adams after the game, I'm not saying it was her preferred matchup. Well, I guess I am. Not because of, it would be the easier matchup. Far from it. Wyoming's a tough matchup for Air Force. But given how last year ended, for Air Force to be able to return the favor on that same stage, I think was I think that's what made it maybe Emily Adams' preferred first-round opponent. So that will be the case Saturday afternoon, 1 o'clock on Extra Sports 1300. If they win, how about this? They'll play San Diego State again on Sunday. Same time. Same channel as well. But if you were out there last night, thank you for going out, supporting this team, supporting those two seniors in particular, and certainly was worth your while because you got to witness Air Force history. 719-247-1313. I was talking earlier about some of the moves that maybe the Avalanche are going to make between now and the trade deadline, as we are a little more than a week away from the start of NFL free agency. What kind of moves are the Broncos going to make? We'll get into some of the rumor and innuendo surrounding Sean Payton's team when we return here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in. Glad to have you on this Wednesday. Appreciate you watching the show, as you can do on a daily basis. Granted, you follow at Extra Sports 1300 or 740 KVOR on your favorite social media platform, as long as they are Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube. Because no TikTok for me or for the station. Maybe we need to do something about that. Not sure. I guess if the appetite from the masses is that we get in the TikTok game, let me know on that. While you're watching the show, you can always drop a comment, and I will get to it over the course of the program. There are more traditional ways of reaching out and being in touch with the show, and those are perfectly allowable. You could call or text into the show at 719-247-1313. Our question of the day, courtesy of producer Ray Dominguez, is who do you want the Broncos to get in free agency? Now, that rumor mill is starting to heat up a little bit here as we're about a week away. Multiple Broncos-related rumors out there. Let's start with Jonathan Jones, chief NFL insider for CBS Sports, whose report today is music to my ears and should be to yours if you're a Denver Broncos fan. Jonathan Jones says the Broncos are in on Kenneth Walker. It's them, it's Jacksonville, and it's Seattle trying to get this guy back. And you always have to wonder a little bit, right? Especially with a guy who just won a Super Bowl. If John Schneider, who fleeced the Broncos in the Russell Wilson trade to help build his second Super Bowl champion team, is going, yeah, we don't need you. And especially because it's that organization, Broncos didn't listen to John Schneider the first time where he's like, sure, you could have Russell Wilson. But the fact that Seattle is trying to get Kenneth Walker back, this is a cap thing with them. They got to get a long-term extension done with Jackson Smith and Jigba. They got a lot of players who are going to become pricier. They would like Kenneth Walker back, but they weren't willing to franchise him. And so that means he's going to cost less than $14.5 million. Because if he was going to cost the same or more than that, then Seattle just should have franchised him. And this has been the guy all along that I have said that the Denver Broncos should be most interested in. They need a guy. And I understand what Sean Payton likes to see out of his running backs, the ability to block, all this kind of stuff. The Denver Broncos need a good runner of the football. They need one of those guys. And they need a reliable runner of the football who's going to stay on the field. And you never know with any of these guys, but Kenneth Walker's injury history is a little bit cleaner than J.K. Dobbins's is. So I've said all along Kenneth Walker needs to be at the top of the list for the Denver Broncos, and I don't know if this report means he's at the top of their list, but he's on their list reportedly. And now with Davis Webb calling plays, it's like anything that you aspire the Broncos offense to be, maybe they can be that. Davis Webb might bring balance to the Broncos offense, true balance. But of course, he needs somebody to give him an excuse to be balanced. And putting Kenneth Walker with RJ Harvey would be the best thing that the Broncos can do this offseason. I really believe that. That's the best move they can make. But as Jonathan Jones reports, they're not the only team after him. So they may have to outbid some teams. And I think both Kenneth Walker and Alec Pierce are two of the more intriguing options for the Denver Broncos. Two players that in recent days have been allowed to enter free agency by their teams. Of course, Alec Pierce coming off of a great year for the Indianapolis Colts. And my thought was, which would you rather have? Would you rather give Bo Nix someone he could throw the ball to, or you want to get somebody who will bring balance to the offense, but maybe not going to help Bo Nix a ton in terms of, being a target in the passing game? But that's why you have RJ Harvey, in my opinion. To me, it's not really that much of a conversation. Kenneth Walker is going to be cheaper. Kenneth Walker is, I think, a player that would be more valuable to the Denver Broncos and what I think they need to be next year if they're going to get back to the AFC Championship and maybe take it one step further. But Alec Pierce is intriguing. Now, you're going to have to pony up for him. He's going to get about $30 million. That's just the price of doing business in free agency. This guy has a clean injury history. This guy catches the football. He had the best yards per catch average in the league last year. You're going to have to pay for this guy. But I think this is the type of guy that if you put him with Courtland Sutton and Marvin Mims, yes, you still need to figure out the running back room. And George Payton has admitted as much. They don't have J.K. Dobbins they don't have J.K. Dobbins in hand. Right? He's not on the roster. So they're going to have to address the running back position, and they're going to have to address the wide receiver position. It's just a matter of what do you prioritize and where do you go to get that help? If the Broncos are willing to pony up, no pun intended, for Alec Pierce, I think he'd fit in perfectly. I know the sticker shock is going to make, I think, some Broncos fans and maybe the Broncos themselves a little shy here because this is not a guy that was a number one wide receiver. This is not even quite what T. Higgins was viewed as or Chris Godwin. But I think there's more room for Alec Pierce to improve. And what he brings to the table, I think the Broncos could certainly use. But to me, if it's a priority, it's Kenneth Walker. And we'll see if the Broncos are motivated enough to potentially outbid Kenneth Walker's former employer in the Jacksonville Jaguars to get him. Now, the more aspirational, the more dream scenario, I think for many people would be to get A.J. Brown. And there are a couple of reports out regarding him. One from NFL.com is that it's going to take a Quinnen Williams type deal to get A.J. Brown from Philadelphia. And that was a significant amount of draft capital. If that is the case, if that's what Howie Roseman is sticking with, Broncos are not going to pay that price, nor really should they. If this were Justin Jefferson, I would say Quinnen Williams deal all day long. But A.J. Brown has to, even though I think that coming to the Denver Broncos has a chance to work out better than it has the last couple of years in Philadelphia, even though I believe that, the Broncos have to be looking at Philadelphia and going, this guy's value is not what it was a year or 2 years ago. We're not giving you this haul of draft capital for a guy who takes every opportunity to roast his starting quarterback. But this is where the other report that I saw today, or was pointed out to me more accurately by producer Ray Dominguez, is that Jeremy Fowler of ESPN is now saying that what Philadelphia wants is not necessarily a young and up-and-coming receiver, because the other day we talked about a Troy Franklin type. They want a veteran guy. And threw out the idea of a Courtland Sutton for A.J. Brown swap. How does that hit your ear? Because no doubt the Broncos would be a better football team than they were to end last year if they replaced Courtland Sutton with A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is a better wide receiver than Courtland Sutton, unequivocally. But that's not the ideal scenario. When I talk about A.J. Brown, I'm saying A.J. Brown with Courtland Sutton. And I think that the Broncos have the ability to think that way. I don't think they have to, go into it saying, it's one or the other. No. Go in trying to get both. Load up. You only have Bo Nix on a rookie deal for a couple more years, and you're seeing the ramifications, even though I don't think signing your franchise quarterback to a big deal is hugely detrimental to your team, which I'll talk about coming up shortly with the big move made today by an AFC West rival of the Denver Broncos. Like, you do it, but that doesn't mean there are no repercussions. It doesn't mean it won't cost you a single player. It will cost you at some point. You will have to do some maneuvering of your roster to be able to make it work. But right now, the Broncos are in the sweet spot where they have a quarterback on a rookie deal. Their mentality should be, no, we don't want to upgrade from Courtland Sutton to A.J. Brown. We want to put A.J. Brown with Courtland Sutton. And that will give you a more every down receiver in A.J. Brown. And then you still have the third down and red zone threat that Courtland Sutton possesses. That's the mentality the Denver Broncos should have. They shouldn't feel like, oh, we got to, give up somebody that we really like, because clearly they like Courtland Sutton. So I think they should be trying to find a way to get A.J. Brown from Philadelphia without sacrificing Courtland Sutton. But if that's what it comes down to, if that's what it's going to come down to, that you're going to have to give up Courtland Sutton in order to get A.J. Brown, I get it. Courtland Sutton has been the consummate professional. He has been a great teammate. He has been a productive member of the Denver Broncos. But the first order of business, Sean Payton, one of the first order of businesses, was he got rid of a few of those type of guys. Courtland Sutton is the Justin Simmons of wide receivers. Right? Great teammate, great in the community, has done everything the organization has asked, has never once criticized anybody. He's been perfect. But so was Justin Simmons. And Sean Payton looked at it and said, we could do better. A.J. Brown is better than Courtland Sutton. But I think there are a few more steps that have to be taken before you get to the point like, all right, we'll give up Courtland Sutton to get A.J. Brown. So as I'm lining up this offseason for the Denver Broncos, I'm saying the best case scenario, not what I predict, but the best case scenario for the Denver Broncos, you sign Kenneth Walker, you trade for A.J. Brown. And that's the way you need to be thinking at this point. You didn't just work your way through cap jail tunnel your way out like Andy Dufresne in the Shawshank Redemption to get out of cap jail, to not be thinking big in terms of what you can do to upgrade your team. But the first thing is they got to get Kenneth Walker. They got to find a way to make this happen. And this is where Mr. Moneybags, Greg Penner, comes into play. There are ways that the wealthier owners in the NFL can outbid other teams without necessarily incurring a huge cap hit. And Greg Penner is one of those wealthier owners. And now we're starting to see, to tie all of this together, a lot of NFL insiders saying, and Jonathan Jones of CBS has been one of them, look out for the Broncos. They're going to be players. 719-247-1313. What does your wish list for the Denver Broncos look like, and what's your reaction to some of these rumors, whether it's A.J. Brown, whether it's the fact that Kenneth Walker and Alec Pierce are now set to hit the free agent market? What's your desire level to land any of these guys? Welcome your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Coming up next, a significant move made by an AFC West rival. Tell you what it is and tell you that we've seen this before from that organization. NFL free agency coming up shortly. We're a week away. Teams angling by moving monies around, letting players walk. Again, Kenneth Walker, not franchised by Seattle. Alec Pierce was not franchised by Indianapolis. So those two, I think, would become the top two free agents in the class. You did have that one name that we have to strike off the wish list if you're a Broncos fan. No Breece Hall. Now, technically, you could still trade for Breece Hall, but I believe the non-exclusive franchise tag carries with it compensation of 2 first-round picks. No. And there was a report on that, Ray, right? Who said that? That the reason why there you go. Somebody said that the Broncos were the reason why
Jones.
the Jets. Who said that? Jonathan Jones?
Yeah, he said, yeah, they're the reason why that they've tagged him. It's because the Broncos are going to make such a huge splash and go after a running back, and they have the money to do it. But like, not quote, but basically they're going to make a big splash, so that's why they tagged him.
Kenneth Walker, you are a Denver Bronco.
Basically. Or what's your third option?
Think
Etienne?
Mm-hmm. But I think Etienne is a little. I don't want. RJ Harvey is a little Travis Etienne like.
Right.
So I don't know. And I said this about David Montgomery. I don't know that he's the right back that I would put with RJ Harvey, because we know that even with Davis Webb now calling plays, there's still going to be a lot of Sean Payton principles, and Sean Payton principles dictate that you have multiple backs, which, like, that would be the one sticking point. I don't see how, if you look at the Broncos as a fit for Kenneth Walker, the only impediment I could see is if Kenneth Walker has an offer from another team, maybe one that resides in the AFC West, maybe one that made a big trade today, that would give Kenneth Walker, you get all the carries. At this point, that's the only impediment I can see to the Broncos landing Kenneth Walker. If all these reports are true and you read the tea leaves, they want Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
Right? And the Jets had to put this franchise tag on Breece Hall to keep him from going to the Broncos, maybe. Does Kenneth Walker... But Kenneth Walker did come from a place where the only reason he was getting all the carries in the Super Bowl was because Zach Charbonnet was hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, if Kenneth Walker wants a bigger role, then the Broncos are willing to offer, then maybe it's a little Nazem Kadri like.
Right.
Like I see the fit in so many different ways. But if Kenneth Walker has, like, this is my last payday and my last chance to kind of call my shot in terms of what role I want to have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe he goes like I'm thinking a Minnesota type where they are devoid of running backs, and would make them hit their, and the Broncos would make him their feature back, but he'd be splitting.
But when you go to teams like Minnesota and you don't really know what their future holds because their quarterback position's up in the air, you just went from a Super Bowl MVP to a team that might not make the playoffs. So are you still like considering Broncos are a Super Bowl contender? Like, you're still only looking at teams, like you said, KC or Denver. Those are your top picks. Even though some other team can come out of nowhere and offer you the world and say we can give you more touches because we don't have a 2-back system or anything like that, you're still in that, no, I just want a Super Bowl and I want to go back.
Well, does he though? I mean, I don't know Kenneth Walker,
right?
But I'll make a local analogy. The Michael Porter,
God, we always got
right. Everything always circles back to Michael Porter on this show. In case you're just tuning in for the first time, Michael Porter loves being in Brooklyn because he's able. I guess it's not I shouldn't do this, but because Michael Porter had a much smaller role, whereas Kenneth Walker had a big role on a great team. Michael Porter had a smaller role on a great team. But just the idea of I did the winning. Now I want to try and be the AP Offensive Player of the Year, and I want to break the bank.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's what Kenneth Walker wants to do now that he has that Super Bowl. So guys that win, you wonder what they want to do. Here's a better one. Malik Jackson. When the Broncos won the Super Bowl, Malik Jackson went and took a huge deal from a team in Jacksonville that at the time had no shot at winning. Is that where Kenneth Walker's head's at right now? Where I just want to get the most carries and the most money that I can get.
That's a good point. Yeah, why cash in while I can.
Well, he's going to cash in.
Yeah.
But Seattle made it very clear to us, you're not worth $14.5 million. I don't know if anybody goes above $14.5 million.
Yeah, I would agree.
Right. Whereas Alec Pierce is probably going to get 30. So, but the Broncos are, I think the best news, if you're a Broncos fan, or best rumor, if you're a Broncos fan, is that one about Breece Hall.
Oh, yeah.
Because that means that the Broncos are actively, could they have gotten Breece Hall? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, but just the idea that the Broncos are looming as a big player to land a running back, and what that means and how desperately the Broncos need that when it matters the most, because they didn't have one when it mattered the most this past year. So we'll see where that all goes with the Denver Broncos and what they look at via free agency. The big move that I mentioned has to do with the Kansas City Chiefs, as today they have traded Trent McDuffie, elite corner, not Pat Surtain, but elite, one of the best 5 corners in the league, in my opinion, traded him to the Rams. They get a first-round pick this year from LA, a 5th and a 6th this year from LA, and a 3rd-round pick next year. This is history repeating itself. This is the defensive version of the Tyreek Hill trade. This is the Kansas City Chiefs saying, we got to part with something of value that is very expensive in order to be able to round out our football team. And the Tyreek Hill trade obviously led to multiple Super Bowls for the Kansas City Chiefs. So this is Brett Veach trying to do the same thing again. Here's the problem. Patrick Mahomes doesn't make Trent McDuffie better. And what I mean by that is the thought behind the Tyreek Hill trade was that we have Patrick Mahomes. We don't need necessarily one of the best 5 receivers in the NFL. And oh, by the way, we still have Travis Kelce. Right? And look, people, when Tyreek Hill was traded, they're like, how can the Chiefs do this? The Chiefs are done. They're rebuilding. And that didn't turn out to be the case. The Chiefs were better for trading Tyreek Hill. The issue, though, again, Patrick Mahomes does not make whoever the Chiefs bring in at corner better. This is a riskier move than trading Tyreek Hill, because now you have an obvious hole at corner if you're the Kansas City Chiefs. And you have to address it. Like with the Tyreek Hill trade, you think, and look, this is what the Chiefs ended up turning the 5 picks they got for Tyreek Hill into. Trent McDuffie, coincidentally, Sky Moore, and Rashee Rice were 3 of the players that they ended up drafting. So they did address the wide receiver room, but they got to get it more right with one of these picks. And maybe it changes the perspective on where Kansas City is going early in the draft. One of my favorite fits with Kansas City is Jeremiah Love. And I still think he is, but now you open up this huge need. Whereas you didn't do that with Tyreek Hill. I knew the Chiefs would be able to make it work without Tyreek Hill. I don't know if the defense can make it work without Trent McDuffie. They must be able to address the cornerback position one way or another. And now you have 2 first-round picks. I could see Kansas City moving back, but I don't know what people are trading up for in this draft. Like Ty Simpson, despite what some analysts will tell you, he is a far cry from Fernando Mendoza. This is not even close to 1A, 1B in terms of the quarterbacks. And the Chiefs are sitting in the top 10. Who's going to trade into the top 10 to grab Ty Simpson? And the answer is nobody. So I find it, even though I think it would be a shrewd move for the Kansas City Chiefs to trade back if Jeremiah Love goes to, let's say, New York, which is the place that I'm looking, as I see the draft board, I say, where could Jeremiah Love go before the Chiefs get on the clock? It's New York. So if he's gone, all the more reason for Kansas City to trade back. But what is somebody trading up for in this draft? I don't know. So the Chiefs might have to stick where they are. The decision will be made easier if Jeremiah Love is off the board. But now corner is a huge need for this Kansas City team. So they have to get it right. I understand the thought process behind Brett Veach in trading Trent McDuffie. I understand it, and I get the necessity of making a move like this. And what they got back from the Rams in terms of draft capital is a haul. And a lot of people are saying Kansas City's rebuilding. They're not rebuilding. They're not. But in order for them to make an impact and move the needle, because quite frankly, they need to move the needle. Right? They got to get better with what the AFC West is now with LA and now with Denver. And now you've taken a step back, maybe 2 steps back. So it's a necessary move to make something like this happen. I understand with McDuffie getting set to break the bank and all this kind of stuff. I understand why it was him. I like the haul that Kansas City got back, but man, Brett Veach has got to get this right. Because Patrick Mahomes isn't going to help cover, opposing wide receivers. So for now, you could say, if we're doing a power rankings thing, Kansas City has either moved down or they are further away from LA and Denver than you may have perceived them to even been 24 hours ago. But that is a haul of draft picks. And the last time Brett Veach did something like this, it worked out. And he's trying to make it happen again. Take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. And then, of course, there is the one position that the Broncos do not need, and that is quarterback. And there's one quarterback in particular that is going to be the most coveted in NFL free agency. Where might Kyler Murray end up? That's next here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Think you have the luck of the Irish? Enter to win our pot full of cash. So this will be a St. Paddy's Day you'll never forget with $5,000 in our luck of the Irish giveaway. Head to extrasports1300.com or kvor.com to enter this national contest sponsored locally by Bullseye Plumbing, Heating, and Air. No luck needed when Bullseye's on target. What I would want to know, though, for this contest, do you get the money on St. Patrick's Day? Because that could buy a lot of a certain beverage that is dark in color, but delicious in taste. Just saying. And that would become a St. Patrick's Day you'll never remember versus one that you'll never forget. To find out full contest rules at extrasports1300.com or kvor.com. So locally with the Denver Broncos, not super interested in the quarterback market, at least being a part of it, right? Doesn't make it that much less intriguing, in my opinion, because it's always fascinating to see where quarterbacks end up. And I think that the Broncos every day, and if you're a Broncos fan every day, you're thinking the football gods, or maybe it's Sean Payton. Now, you don't have to get into these sweepstakes because the top target on the board is Kyler Murray. As the Cardinals have announced, or just rumor that the Cardinals aren't going to trade him. And who's trained for that contract? Nobody. So they're going to release him. If I am Kyler Murray, I am hopping on the first plane to Minneapolis, and I'm curling up in a ball on the doorstep of Kevin O'Connell like a lost puppy and asking him as soon as he opens the door, will you please take me in? Kyler Murray to Minnesota makes more sense, so much sense that I don't think it's going to happen. But look at Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones talked about how it was a masterclass in quarterbacking that he attended while he was in Minnesota. And you saw the result of that in Indianapolis. Kyler Murray, for the betterment of his career, should go to Minnesota. And Minnesota should want Kyler Murray. Because I think this is a guy that, with your ability, whether it's Darnold or Daniel Jones, to rehabilitate quarterbacks, this will give you a great out from the whole J.J. McCarthy experience. And sure, maybe you frame it now that you're just bringing him in to compete, but this is the same thing Indy went through, right? We're bringing in Daniel Jones to compete with Anthony Richardson, and lo and behold, wasn't really a competition. And Daniel Jones was the guy almost immediately. But you could frame it like it's a competition. It will push J.J. McCarthy to be better. Nope, Kyler Murray's coming to take his job. I think it would be an amazing fit. And in an NFC North that I know the Vikings were at the bottom of that, but Green Bay getting back Micah Parsons, but I wonder a bit if Green Bay has kind of stalled out, which was kind of the reason why they made the Micah Parsons trade in the first place. Detroit, this is a big year for them, and I think Chicago is in many ways the NFC version of the Denver Broncos in that they will be looked at as a prime regression candidate because of the heroics of Caleb Williams this year. As bad of a season as it was in Minnesota, they have a chance to get right back in contention in the NFC North, and they're not going to be able to do it with J.J. McCarthy, but they could do it by rehabilitating Kyler Murray. And I think that, I know, one man's trash, another man's treasure, all that kind of stuff. But Minnesota, it's not just that Kyler Murray is in desperate need of a change of scenery, which he is. The minute that it was leaked that the Arizona Cardinals had to put screen time into his contract, it was over. And they were never going to get whatever they were hoping to out of Kyler Murray. That marriage was on the brink at that point. From both sides. Kyler Murray hates the fact that they probably had to put that in the contract, and the Cardinals hated the idea that they had to put it in the contract. But Kyler Murray is not just a guy that needs a change of scenery. He needs the right change of scenery. And the best change of scenery he can get is Minnesota. The wrong change of scenery is New York. And if I am a quarterback, and Justin Fields just went through this past year, if I am a quarterback, it was Aaron Rodgers before him in many ways. If I'm a quarterback trying to resurrect my career, the last place that I'm going is New York. Sorry, until New York comes up with a good quarterback and shows that they can coach a good quarterback, not going there. Part of me says that Kyler Murray is going to be attracted to the bright lights of the New York market, even though the stadium is very much not in New York. That kind of feels like an on-brand move for Kyler Murray to be hailed as the savior of the Jets. If he chooses to do that, good luck, bud. Good luck. He goes to Minnesota. I think he's serious about rehabilitating his career. But one other team that I think could be in the mix here for Kyler Murray's services is Pittsburgh. Because I think with Mike McCarthy, I think they are looking for a veteran. And I know that Aaron Rodgers of it all, and Aaron Rodgers was back on his Pat McAfee tour. I think I listened to the Steelers GM when he spoke at the Combine. I do not feel like the Steelers are going to wait forever for Aaron Rodgers. They're not playing this game again. And if Aaron Rodgers gives them no indication whether he's going to come back, Pittsburgh, it would be organizational malpractice to again sit and wait for this guy. I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers is a bad option to bring back for Pittsburgh. I'm just saying have some self-respect this time and see that there are other options. Now, for what I think the Steelers should be doing, they should just double down on Will Howard and see where that gets them. Maybe Will Howard's something. If he's not, then, you have a chance to grab Arch Manning or, one of these other young quarterbacks. But knowing what Pittsburgh is and the fact that they hired Mike McCarthy tells me that they're still very much trying to continue what Mike Tomlin did, which is always be competitive. And they're not thinking this, but we all are, but not be anywhere close to a championship contender. They feel like if they're at the party enough, it will finally happen for them. And I just don't see it. And look, Pittsburgh would not be a bad landing spot for Kyler Murray. I know everyone dumps on Mike McCarthy for his inability to win big games since he won the Super Bowl and all that kind of stuff. I get that. Dak Prescott was incredibly productive with Mike McCarthy as his head coach. I would at least say this will go a lot better for Pittsburgh with Kyler Murray than it did Russell Wilson, because I don't think Kyler Murray is washed. I think there's still something there. Is it the ideal landing spot? Is it a place where Kyler Murray would be at his best and would move the needle like it would in Minnesota? No, I don't think so. But I could see Pittsburgh being a potential landing spot for Kyler Murray. But to me, I'm like, I have no dog in the fight. I don't care how Minnesota does this upcoming year. I don't care how the rest of Kyler Murray's career goes. I'm just saying, if Kyler Murray is smart about it, I think he's trying to make his way to Minnesota. If he's smart about it, he would be trying to make his way to Minnesota. Better way to phrase that. But something tells me he's going to end up a Jet. If he's successful in New York, he'd be the first in a very, 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 very long time. 719-24-7-1313. Your thoughts on where Kyler Murray might end up. And our question of the day is regarding the Denver Broncos. What does your wish list look like for free agency? A lot of rumors swirling about Kenneth Walker being an option for the Broncos, the A.J. Brown asking price of it all. And then Alec Pierce has entered the free agent chat. You're going to have to spend to get him, but would he not be kind of exactly what the Broncos need out of that position? 719-24-7-1313. Coming up next, we'll get back to the Avs, Air Force, and plenty of other things with the three stories that are driving the show. You're listening to Drive Time Sports on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in Wednesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or you're listening on the streaming apps of those two radio stations, which are both free to download, both free to use at all times, and both sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. Of course, you could also watch the show on social media at 740 KVOR, at Extra Sports 1300. But no matter where you consume the show or how, please reach out. This is an interactive experience. You could call or text into the show at 719-247-1313. Perhaps you have some thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. All right, story number one, the Avs get right in Anaheim.
Down low for Brock Nelson. Natchez, a one-timer, and he scores! Click, click, boom! It's a Marty party! His third power play goal in a week for the Avalanche. With 5:55 to go in the first period, just like last night, it's 2-0 Colorado.
Connor McGahey on the call for Altitude Radio, as heard on Extra Sports 1300. The Avs would not look back from there as they beat a good Anaheim Ducks team on the second night of a back-to-back by a 5-1 final score. And I thought that the Avs were on the verge of kind of breaking out of, I don't want to say post-Olympic break a malaise, but just it was tough sledding. A lot of games in a short amount of time, even though the Avs come out of it winning 4 of 5. I think that they were difficult wins to get, even against some lesser competition along the way. But late in the game against LA, I thought that the Avs kind of found their footing, kind of broke through a little bit. And I thought a performance like last night was entirely possible given that. And that's what they got, 5-1. So they get right in that regard. I think the best performance they've had in about a month when you consider the way they went into the Olympic break, the fact that they didn't play during the Olympic break, and now these handful of games thereafter. And it's perfect timing, too, because the Avs' next two games are Dallas on Friday and Minnesota on Sunday. And I thought that Jared Bednar was being a little bit of an alarmist when he talked about how much the previous Minnesota loss changed that landscape in the Central. But if the Avs go into this weekend and take 2 losses, the Central Division would now be officially up for grabs. So these are games that the Avs need to get. And it's not going to be easy. Minnesota's hot right now, and Dallas has won a franchise record 10 games in a row. So these are heavyweight fights with the 3 teams that are the class of the NHL. So perfect timing for the Avs to get right in that regard. And maybe, just maybe, there is a way that the Avalanche, I don't want to say can get right, but can get better on the power play. You heard on Connor's call there that Marty Natchez has been scoring some power play goals lately. What the Avs have done is put him in the spot that Nathan MacKinnon has been in. Standing in the circle and just slapping the puck as soon as it comes to him. 2 of his 3 goals, power play goals since the Olympic break, have come that way. And it's what we saw with him in Czechia in the Olympics. And I wondered going into the tournament whether Dave Haxtell and the Avs staff would be able to look at the Olympics and say, all right, how can we differently employ these guys to improve our power play based on what these teams did? Well, it wasn't Canada that they took stuff from. It was Czechia, and they put Necas in this spot, and he's been productive. Now, I'm going to temper my enthusiasm a little bit on this and would suggest you do the same because, one, it's early in this process. Two, you saw it later in the game last night. The Avs tried again to do the same thing. Brock Nelson cross ice to Marty Necas, and the pass was a little bit behind. They're kind of threading the needle a little bit here with this particular setup on the power play. But at least it's something. It's something to go on. And I've been clear, I don't think we're going to be talking about the Avs as even a middle-of-the-road power play team by the time the season is over. I just think it's the one weak link, the one weakness of this team. Who 5-on-5 are nearly unbeatable. The goaltending's great, blue line set, all this kind of stuff. There's very little to pick at with the Colorado Avalanche except for this. And I think it's just something that they're going to have to deal with. But man, even with that being said, if they can climb out of the basement of the NHL when it comes to the power play, that is a welcome change for this team. So maybe they have something here, but like their recent form, the power play, it's got to be good. It's got to be better against Dallas and Minnesota, and it will be more difficult for it to be better against these two teams. But these are two big-time games coming up for the Colorado Avalanche. And while I'm on that subject, not our next story, but a continuance of our first story. Can I just once again point to the sheer lunacy of the way that the NHL playoffs is built? Because right now you have three teams, and you can rank them however you want, and you could talk about how close Dallas or Minnesota are to Colorado, right? But the fact of the matter is those three teams are head and shoulders and then some above everyone else in the NHL. And the fact that one of those three teams is going to exit the playoffs in the first round is a travesty. These should be three of the four remaining teams in the Western Conference playoffs. The two of these three teams should be playing in the Western Conference finals. It is a joke the way that the NHL sets up their playoffs. It was a joke last year when the Avs had to play Dallas. It's been a joke this entire time. And even if it's Dallas and Minnesota, that's unfair. They earned a better fate than having to play one another in round one. Is dumb. And this year, it's even more pronounced than it was last year, and points out how ridiculous this all is. Two of the three teams I just mentioned are going to play each other in round one. Meanwhile, the Pacific Division is going to be like the Central should be the Central versus the Pacific in every matchup. The Avs should play a team out of the Pacific. The Wild should play a team out of the Pacific, and the Dallas Stars should play a team out of the Pacific. And when they beat every one of those teams in the Pacific in 5 games, then the real playoffs can begin. It's a joke. But hopefully it's a joke that the Avalanche can at least avoid for one round coming up in the spring. 2 wins this weekend would certainly help them avoid that. Now let's go to the hardwood for story number 2.
8 seconds left on the shot clock. Into Perry. Head fake. Drives down the lane. Shot up. Good! And with that, Milani Perry is now the all-time leading scorer in Air Force women's basketball history.
Tis I on the call for Learfield last night. I didn't fully expect Milani Perry to be able to break the school's all-time record in scoring last night. The way that the last few games had gone for her, the team that they were playing, I thought that maybe Saturday in the first round of the Mount West tournament was going to be that day. And it'd still count all the same. But Milani Perry, there was a point in the third quarter where you just had a feeling that, oh, she's going to make a real run at this thing. And then obviously she ended up getting that. 1,739 points she now has. She needed 26 last night to set the record. She got 26. And after the game, she was emotional because she was able to do it in front of her family, in front of her friends, in front of her fellow cadets, and do it on her home floor. It meant a ton to her. And it was a great moment last night at Clune. Certainly made the fact that they lost to San Diego State, although pretty much everybody loses to San Diego State, made it sting a little bit less. But a great celebration last night of her storied career, one of the best careers we've seen from an Air Force athlete, period. Right? Certainly the best career we've seen from a women's basketball player at the academy. But also, I don't want to leave out the performance that Emily Adams had last night as well. 18 points for her, and she was fantastic. Set the tone early. Air Force had the lead after the first quarter. Both seniors really showed out on senior night for Air Force, and that was very cool to see. And now I think for Milani especially, I mean, she said she wasn't thinking about the record. I don't know how you couldn't. I mean, she's great. You know, her mindset, I've talked to her enough times. She's great at, making the main thing. She's good about compartmentalizing and not letting something overwhelm her. I can't imagine that this wasn't on her mind a lot over the last few games. And now that she has this record, she can go in, and she's always team oriented. Her first goal would always be for Air Force to win. But you can't tell me she didn't want that record. Who wouldn't want that record? But now it's just when they go out to Vegas for that Saturday game against Wyoming, it could be all about Air Force win. That's the entire storyline. It's about Air Force winning the rubber match with Wyoming, getting set for another showdown with San Diego State, and trying to bust that bracket out there in Vegas. But congratulations to Milani Perry. Great performance last night from she and Emily Adams as Air Force celebrates their seniors. The one thing that you lament was that they didn't pull off a huge upset by knocking off the newly minted regular season champions in the Mount West. That, of course, being the San Diego State Aztecs. Now, let's go to our third story today from the Gridiron.
Snap. Gino steps up, avoids one man, lays it over the top. Walker, touchdown, Seahawks! Ken Walker III reaching up, making a diving reception in the front corner of the end zone from 17 out.
KIRO on the call, Seahawks radio. Kenneth Walker has been allowed to enter free agency. The Seattle Seahawks did not place any sort of tag on him. There's all sorts of tagging going on yesterday in the NFL. He wasn't one of them. And the number one item or the number one name on the list for the Denver Broncos, in my opinion, is now available for them to sign. And this isn't necessarily a surprise because Seattle I think the rumors were already that they weren't going to, but now it's official. And there's reporting out there from Jonathan Jones of CBS that Kenneth Walker's market primarily is Denver, Jacksonville, and a return to Seattle. And there's another report by Jones saying that part of what motivated the Jets to franchise tag Breece Hall was that the Broncos were looming. See how all of a sudden everything for the Denver Broncos is possible? But before Davis Webb got play calling duties, you're like, I don't know. There's a lot of things that I may like to happen, but Sean Payton, now he's given up play calling duties. This is a brave new Sean Payton world here. They might be prioritizing a running back. And rightly so. They get a play caller in there that gives them a better chance to be balanced, and then they have the potential to go out and they're serious about getting a difference maker in their backfield. Maybe Sean Payton does want the Denver Broncos to improve next year, but that's the guy I put at the top of the list here. Other rumors surrounding the Denver Broncos, or at least players that the Denver Broncos may be targeting. One report from NFL.com says you got to give the Eagles a Quinnen Williams type deal for them to part with A.J. Brown, but a more measured report from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN saying that Philadelphia wants a veteran receiver in return for A.J. Brown, not a young up-and-coming wide receiver. And he even theorized the potential of a Cortland Sutton for A.J. Brown swap, perhaps. And for the record, it's not ideal. I would want both if I'm the Denver Broncos. I think now that they're out of cap jail and all this, and they have a deep-pocketed owner, and they have a quarterback on a rookie deal, they should be shooting for the moon, which would be Cortland Sutton on one side, A.J. Brown on the other, and Marvin Mims doing his thing behind the line of scrimmage, barely in front of the line of scrimmage. That's what I aspire to if I'm George Payton and Sean Payton. But if it really comes down to that, in a not only a free agent class that's a little thin at receiver, but looking at a draft class where at 30 getting a difference-making wide receiver seems far-fetched, if it actually comes down to the Eagles accepting Cortland Sutton for A.J. Brown, if I'm the Denver Broncos, I do that deal. Because you are now upgrading that go-to receiver. Cortland Sutton was Bo Nix's go-to receiver, and A.J. Brown would immediately become that, and he would be better than Cortland Sutton in that spot. Again, not what I would like to do if I'm the Denver Broncos, but if it comes down to it, and that's all it would take, I do that deal. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. More Drive Time Sports after this on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Friday at 9 a.m. Make sure you pick up our Pluto basketball sweet deal of the week. Pluto basketball is, they strive to be the premier basketball program of Colorado Springs, helps the player in your life develop their game, training. They could play in big-time basketball leagues, go to camps, and competitive teams. They're just out to make your basketball player better. And you'll get 1 month of group training, and that is a half-price training session valued at $220 on sale for $110. So 50% off. Go to extrasports1300.com or kvr.com to pick up our Pluto basketball sweet deal of the week. To the text line and producer Ray Dominguez. A lot of talk today about maybe moves the Broncos and the Avs are going to make, or your people would like them to make.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So from Aaron, it is hard to overstate what an impact Landy is having on the Avs. The only time they've struggled this whole season was when he was out, and now he's back and really contributing, including the power play. I think if he stays healthy, they'll be Cup champs.
So that's one vote for don't need to do anything drastic, perhaps, from Aaron. And you're right. And I thought, and I said this before the Olympic break, I said that the Avalanche were missing Gabriel Landeskog because with his story, his leadership, all this kind of stuff, I thought he held guys accountable in more ways than one. Held them accountable as the on-ice captain, but also kind of an unspoken way of holding them accountable is you look at Gabriel Landeskog and everything that he's gone through to come back. What excuse do you have to slack off that evening? And I think you saw, to Aaron's point, I thought you saw a team that lost their way a little bit before the break without Gabriel Landeskog. That is also a piece of this puzzle, certainly, is Gabriel Landeskog. And they're going to need more from him, quite frankly, because Valer Nichushkin has been overall underwhelming, and now Arturi Lekkonen's hurt. So maybe, going to Chris McFarland's words from the other day, maybe he zags when everyone else is thinking he zigs, and he goes out and gets a winger with all this stuff going on. We shall see. Of course, Nazem Kadri can play wing if called upon. What else?
From Scott and Florissant. As a GM on a bad team, would you worry about taking Nichushkin and possibly the possibility of him relapsing with his stuff off ice issues?
I would definitely, not knowing Valer Nichushkin, I would have that concern. I would need to be convinced. I think that's a great point by Scott, because there is that baggage, but he is a little bit removed from it. And he does, Nichushkin, one piece of information that's important, he can put together a no-trade list. So if the Avalanche are looking to move Valer Nichushkin, he could potentially veto a trade to anywhere that he thinks would not be a good fit for him. Doesn't mean he has a full no-trade clause, but he could cobble together a list of teams where he says, I don't want to go to that city, I want to play for that team. And maybe the Avs can find a suitor amongst the teams that Valer Nichushkin doesn't say no to. But there is, if I'm an opposing GM, I would want to take on a player that I know that this stuff is kind of behind him. And I know for anybody that's dealt with this, it's never truly behind you, but I think Valer Nichushkin has not had any issues in the last year or so. And I think you would be more confident now than maybe a year ago. Now, here's the other part of this, and why I say, Valer Nichushkin for Nazem Kadri, it might be in a roundabout way. What if they make that deal, Nazem Kadri for Nichushkin, and then Calgary pulls a Carolina with Mikko Rantanen and says, okay, we get this stuff from Colorado. Maybe we get a high-profile prospect, although the Avs don't have many of those, but a nice prospect and a pick, and then we turn around and flip Valeri Nichushkin to another team and get more. We'll see. My guess is that Valeri Nichushkin remains an Av, but I think that might also mean that Nazem Kadri is not going to be an Av because the money just makes too much sense for that to be the swap.
719 looks like a first-time texter.
Nice.
Welcome. What about O'Reilly instead of Kadri?
Mm-hmm.
His price tag is a little bit lower. They're the same age. O'Reilly has a history with the Avalanche organization. He's good in the face-off circle, and he's a difference maker.
He's not as big of a difference maker as Nazem Kadri, but in a world where Nazem Kadri isn't coming to the Colorado Avalanche, I love Ryan O'Reilly to be the third line center. I love it. So to me, if Nazem Kadri isn't rejoining the Avs by this time on Friday, but they brought back Ryan O'Reilly, I still think that is a significant move. So I would have no problem with Ryan O'Reilly. I just don't think that's what the Avs are angling to do here. I think that the Avs are big game hunting. But again, maybe it's a winger. Maybe that's what it turns out to be, and then they use whatever premium capital to make a trade like that happen, and then to the texture's point, take a lesser draft pick or something like that to bring in a Ryan O'Reilly. I saw Scott Lawton's name. That to me, that doesn't move the needle at all. Ryan O'Reilly would, just not as much as Nazem Kadri, and maybe by a wide margin. But again, you have to factor in how much Nazem Kadri is getting paid.
Okay, I'm going to go to the Facebook question first. Who do you want the Broncos to get during the free agency?
Mm-hmm.
From Tommy, KW3.
Nice. Tommy, you and I are of like mind on that.
From, I want to say Jose, Devin Lloyd or Travis Etienne.
Travis Etienne would not be bad, but I look at him as an upgrade from RJ Harvey, and I still think you need to get another running back, but you just flip that dynamic, and now Etienne is your lead back. I think they're a little bit similar. I wouldn't mind. It's kind of like the A.J. Brown, Cortland Sutton thing. Like, if you told me that Travis Etienne would end up a Denver Bronco, that's an upgrade over both RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins. I just think that Etienne, skill set wise, is closer to Harvey.
Would you need to know that the Broncos tried for Walker and then ended up with Etienne?
I think I already know that they're going after him. I think it's like, I didn't love the idea of the Broncos landing David Montgomery, but we heard that they were willing to offer a 5th round pick, right. For Montgomery. They were outbid. So I guess let me see something like that, and then see that the Broncos were willing to bid this and they just got outbid. And look, if he ends up back in Seattle, then I just don't, at this point, with all the smoke billowing around, I don't know how Kenneth Walker ends up on Jacksonville instead of Denver.
Right.
But to Jose's, that creates an opportunity to get Etienne, which would be a fine consolation prize. But that's what he would be. He would be a consolation prize, because I think Kenneth Walker's the number one name on the board. And now that Breece Hall was tagged, by the way.
And then from Kenneth Walker.
Nice.
From the 719, you're going to love this one.
Uh-oh.
The Broncos need more team speed, especially on the offense. They should look at getting Tyreek Hill, your boy.
Check that person's profile and make sure they haven't ever messaged this show about how much of a blight he was on Kansas City and how bad we were as Chiefs fans for putting up with his stuff and wanting him on. I'm kidding. I just think that the Broncos, one, how fast is Tyreek Hill going to be coming off of a catastrophic leg injury? That would be a longer term investment, I think, and which I don't love. And also, too, Tyreek Hill would fit into the mode that the Broncos were in a year ago when they got Hufanga and Greenlaw and Dobbins. They were able to land these guys despite their cap issues because those guys had injury histories. And I think we say in the end, the only true unequivocal success was Tulanoa Hufanga. J.K. Dobbins wasn't there when the Broncos needed him the most, and Dre Greenlaw was what's the name of this Milford, the Milford Academy. It was Milford man. He wasn't seen nor heard much this season for the Denver Broncos. So Hill, if the Broncos are still in that mode, then Tyreek Hill would be a good fit. I don't think they should be. I think they should be big game hunting, and I think they should be getting guys that they can have a little bit more confidence will be at the height of their powers throughout the season. I don't think they need to be, but I could see it. I could definitely see it. I just think that, but really, I mean, Ray, tell me if I'm missing somebody. So your choices right now are you could trade for A.J. Brown.
Mm-hmm.
How realistic that is, it depends on who you trust, who's reporting you trust, because nobody is going to give Howie Roseman a Quinnen Williams type deal to get a disgruntled employee off of their hands. But the routes right now are either you trade for A.J. Brown or you sign Alec Pierce.
Right.
Okay. Those are who's the next guy then? So Pierce is the highest profile free agent.
Mm-hmm.
And then A.J. Brown is the highest profile available via trade wide receiver. Who would the next guy on either one of those lists be?
I mean, I still get confused about franchise tag, but
Pickens?
Pickens.
I don't think Pickens is going anywhere.
No, they're tagging him. I think they tagged him, didn't they?
Yeah, but I think, didn't they give him the same tag that the Jets gave Breece Hall, the non-exclusive? You can check on that. But if it is the non-exclusive, it means that if you want to give up multiple first-round picks, you can have George Pickens.
Yeah, it was non-exclusive.
Okay. So that's not super feasible because that's kind of like a Quinnen Williams type deal. But my point is, and I think you illustrated my point, the next guy after Alec Pierce might be Tyreek Hill.
There's a couple more.
Okay, go on. Elaborate.
Mike Evans.
Would you put Mike Evans above Tyreek Hill?
Right now, yeah.
I don't think I would.
But my thing
part of the reason why the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think, underachieved from what I expected them to is because Mike Evans wasn't available for most of the year.
Is Tyreek even going to be ready for the season?
I think so.
Okay.
Changes it. But what is he? Because remember Javonte Williams. And now there's a little bit, you got to be fair, a little egg on the face of the Denver Broncos because Javonte Williams not only was successful with Dallas, now he's got a longer term deal. But my worry with Tyreek Hill is not whether he's going to be available week one. It's what he's going to look like when he is available.
Right.
But he or Mike Evans would really be kind of in line with what the Denver Broncos did last offseason, and I just don't think that that's the mode they should be thinking in. But As far as Evans, Hill, I'll take Hill above Mike Evans.
Okay.
But they're comparable.
Right. Let me give you 2 names and then we'll
Okay.
because this is a list I saw. Romeo Dobbs
Romeo Dobbs from the
Green Bay.
Packers. Okay. But as a trade
No, he's a free agent.
already? I feel like
It says I'm on CBS top free agents.
Romeo Dobbs just got signed, just got drafted not that long ago. Man, I am aging rapidly. He had his injury issues too. I mean, if you're going free agency, the guy that you don't have to, that would be different than that mindset that the Broncos were in last year is Alec Pierce, because he'd be really expensive and he's really healthy.
I'm sorry. There's one that we forgot that just dropped today.
Oh,
New England released a receiver.
yes. I forgot.
Yeah.
Stephon Diggs was released by the New England Patriots. Let me say for the record that I do think that Stephon Diggs was, by all accounts, a positive contributor to the New England Patriots this year. I think this has to do with how much of a headache he has brought to the team off the field.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and timing is everything. You know, Stephon Diggs could be a good idea to pick up last year. And the rumors are that the Broncos were interested in him last year. And just a year later, it could not be a good fit. I would say that is the case here. I would take Tyreek Hill before I would take a Stephon Diggs.
Okay. And the last name I'll throw out, if you want to trade Waddle, do you go back after it?
Oh, a million percent. Oh, no, because if Jalen Waddle is available, I don't think he is. But if he were to be, yeah, I take Jalen Waddle, and I dropped the whole AJ Brown thing. If Jalen Waddle is actually available, I'm out on. I'm okay with the Broncos bowing out of the AJ Brown sweepstakes. Get Jalen Waddle.
Because I don't know, it feels like Miami's kind of in a rebuild type mode right now.
But why didn't they sell him at the deadline?
Thought they still had a chance.
Or they thought they could get more in the offseason?
Maybe. But Waddle's hasn't he expressed how he's a little frustrated?
Don't they all? You know, I'll say this and then we gotta take a break. You and I were talking about this because of the whole AJ Brown thing. And the biggest pushback I have received when I brought up AJ Brown is he's a malcontent and all that kind of stuff. This is the reality of the wide receiver position. Not saying that everybody is Terrell Owens. I'm just saying there's a graph somewhere where the more talented, the more headaches they give you.
Yes.
Like it's just the natural. Either they got something off the field like Stephon Diggs and Tyreek Hill, or they're disgruntled like
as a Steelers fan,
yes.
Trust me, I know.
You're going to have to accept some of that. If you want the Denver Broncos to up, well, I'll tell you the player that you don't have to deal with that. Alec Pierce.
Yeah.
Alec Pierce has had no indications, but who knows if he's paid $30 million and he walks into your locker room, like maybe he starts expecting the ball more. I don't know. But you know, if you want the Denver Broncos to upgrade at the wide receiver position, you're just not going to be able to get the second coming of a better version of Cortland Sutton in every way, shape, and form. Like as far as the teammate, Cortland Sutton, and this is a credit to him, is so egoless and is such the perfect teammate. And maybe it's where you say, no, I don't want to trade him for AJ Brown. But the nature of the position is they're not like Cortland Sutton. That's why Sean Payton, after the bloodletting that he did when he first came in and cleaned house, why Cortland Sutton stayed.
Yeah.
Because at a position with a bunch of divas and guys that like to run their mouth, Cortland Sutton didn't do that. So if you want to upgrade from Cortland Sutton or upgrade with Cortland Sutton, you're going to have to take on a guy that can get a little bit disgruntled. It's just what you're going to have to do. Are you willing to do that to upgrade the wide receiver position? That's a question Broncos fans need to ask themselves, but also a question, more importantly, George and Sean Payton need to ask themselves. You could continue to answer our question of the day on Facebook. Who would you like the Broncos to get in free agency? Doesn't have to be a free agent, just as the new league year begins. 719-247-1313, also a viable way to reach out to the show. Back after this. Good conversation today. Appreciate the interaction. Quiet night tonight. Avs off till Friday. Nuggets will play tomorrow night against the LA Lakers. One move that the Nuggets did make today, former CSU star David Roddy has signed a two-way contract with the Denver Nuggets. So now Roddy is going to be sitting on the bench with KJ Simpson, a Buff and a Ram. I saw Ray showed me the meme of and one where I believe it was one Crip and one Blood that were both holding up their. I know I speak from experience, but that's what they were. Ray, you're laughing at me.
Yeah, it was two gang members.
One with a blue
Yes.
flag or bandana, one with a red one.
Like ending their.
Yes. That's exactly what it was. But that's gonna be fun. A Buff and a Ram on the same team, and neither one of them are the cure to what ails the Denver Nuggets. No return, by the way, tomorrow night for Peyton Watson or Aaron Gordon. And now Peyton Watson's back soon. Looks like J.K. Dobbins is back soon.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. That's so true.
Like we're now what, 2 weeks removed? A week, week and a half
I think
removed from
it was,
that?
yeah, it was right after I think the Golden State game that he posted that or something like that. Like after a bad loss.
I get it. It's his Instagram account.
Ocho
He
back.
might use it for his own, like, hey, maybe he's telling himself I'm back soon. But a lot of people read into that. And Peyton Watson not back tomorrow, nor is Aaron Gordon, although there are reports that Gordon might be available for the Knickerbockers coming up on Friday. And then, of course, on Monday, the rematch. That's the other thing I wanted to get into was the Lou Dort thing. We'll do it tomorrow. Appreciate you tuning in.